Hey, I'm Micah, and this is Micah's Media Recap, a little podcast where I yap about whatever I'm watching at the moment. If you want to join me, you can put this on while you do your chores, your crafts, hell, even while you're trying to sleep. I'd love if you would lend me your ear for a little while. How would you go about your day knowing that your brother is pledged to make the rest of your immortal lives a living hell? That is a question our friend Stefan Salvatore will have to contend with today. Let's take a walk down to Mystic Falls, Virginia. Our episode 2 cold open has us on a little camping trip in the foggy woods of Mystic Falls with an unnamed couple, pausing their makeout session when the woman hears thunder outside their tent. They're out here tonight because they want to catch a glimpse of the comet that's going to be passing overhead. And if there's a storm, they're not going to be able to. The guy assures her that it's not going to rain and tells her that he got her something special, that it's back in the car. So she needs to sit tight while he goes and gets it. This guy needs to watch more movies. As Scream taught us, if you're in a situation out of the ordinary, never tell somebody you'll be right back. Only a moment passes before there's a thud somewhere nearby. More thunder, maybe? It's followed by a steady dripping on the outside of the tent. Rain. Seems like the woman was right after all. Excited to rub her correct prediction in her boyfriend's face, she climbs out of the tent to feel absolutely nothing at all on her skin. So where is that noise coming from? Following it, she turns around to see a steady source of suspiciously dark liquid coming from one direct source above their tent. She aims her flashlight up towards the trees and shrieks as she illuminates the dead body of her boyfriend, strung up in the branches, throat ripped out. That's what you get for going off on your own, man. The woman takes off into the forest, absolutely hightailing it to their car. She makes it, too. Abandons the flashlight to yank open the door. But, see, the problem is, her boyfriend was the one with the keys. In fact, this woman is so stomach-droppingly reminded of when she hears the chirp of the key fob way too close by for comfort. What can you really do in that case? She freezes, staring out into the dark forest surrounding her, unable to even see her future attacker. That is, until he drops down from the trees and turns her into his dessert for the night. Following the logic from the last episode, we know now that Damon is the culprit. And with that added knowledge, we get a little bit of a look into his inner workings. I don't think it's a coincidence that he keeps going after couples. Quite frankly, I don't think hunger is a major factor either. He always seems to keep the woman alive longer, giving them just enough time to watch the panic set in, and so he can have that moment where he crushes their hopes of escape. Damon likes the chase. He's a hunter, a true vampire. Stefan, on the other hand, is playing it the exact opposite. After the title drop, we get our opening monologues from Elena and Stefan, both writing about how, because they have each other to look forward to, they can greet the morning with excitement and not regret the day before it happens. As always, I have to ignore the complicated implications of the actor Paul Wesley's shoulder tattoo. I will not wonder how the hell Stefan has anything inked on him when he was turned in the 1800s and has healing powers, I promise. Anyway, on the way downstairs, Aunt Jenna stops Elena for a bit of fashion advice. She wants to look as professional as possible because she has a parent-teacher conference concerning Jeremy. Jeremy, who apparently left for school early to finish a birdhouse for woodshop, even though, as Elena helps Jenna figure out, Jeremy isn't taking woodshop. So where is Jeremy? He's at the hospital checking in on Vicky Donovan. Like in most situations, he's not supposed to be there. It's before visiting hours. But Jeremy needs to know if she's doing all right. The nurse lets him know that Vicky's lost a lot of blood and she needs her rest, but that he can come back later to check on her. In class, Mr. Tanner, Mystic Fall High's worst and, at the moment, seemingly only teacher, is speaking about the comet that was mentioned at the start of the episode. That it was discovered nearly 5 centuries ago, and that it hasn't been over Mystic Falls in over 145 years. getting a feeling that this comment might be important later on. He stops his lecture to single out Elena and Stefan for not paying attention. They are, admittedly, choosing to stare at each other rather than pay attention to his lesson. But I personally think it's just really funny to have your biggest beef be with a new kid who actually seems to like history and a girl whose family died not that long ago. Like, my dude, I'm sure you have way more annoying students. They talk after class, Stefan reminding us just how old he is by lending Elena his copy of Wuthering Heights that dates back to when Emily Bronte used the pseudonym Ellis Bell. He claims it was passed down through the family. Yeah, sure, man. It seems that Bonnie's brought up her talk with her grandma to Caroline, but neither are taking it all that seriously. She's not psychic or clairvoyant, Bonnie tells her, just according to Grams, a witch, which she chalks up to mostly drunk talk from crazy family. Caroline jokes, feel free to conjure up the name and number of that guy from last night, who we know was Damon. Bonnie points out that she wasn't the one who saw him, asking Caroline why she didn't just go up and talk to him. Her excuse was that she was drunk. And I say that any excuse is a good one if it keeps her away from Damon. We've seen what he's capable of. We pick back up with Jeremy in the schoolyard, doing what he does best, picking a fight with Tyler Lockwood. Ignoring the two girls he seems to be flirting with, Jeremy jumps into interrogating Tyler. If they're supposedly so close, how's Vicky doing? Tyler says she's fine, but Jeremy, knowing that he was the only one at the hospital that morning, goes hard with the questions to prove Tyler's lie. How bad is she? Do they know what attacked her? What room number was she in? Etc. Caught in his lie, Tyler's gotten no good response. He just warns Jeremy he's going to kick his ass. Turns out this is exactly what Jeremy wants, though. He gets all up in Tyler's face and says, yeah, you keep saying that, but when are you actually going to do it? Because I vote for right here and right now. And then he punctuates his feelings by shoving Tyler. They have a little stare-off. Tyler's mouth gaping, looking around in disbelief, like, oh shit, this kid really means it. Jeremy raising his eyebrows in an invitation. Tyler gives in first, showing us that his bark is much bigger than his bite, when he tells Jeremy to walk away as his quote-unquote final warning. Fed up, Jeremy gives Tyler his final warning. Stop playing Vicky, because the next time Tyler hurts her, Jeremy swears he'll kill him. Then Jeremy stalks off. By the way, while all of this is happening, there's this song playing in the background, Hang You From the Heavens by The Dead Weather, that is actually about a controlling romantic relationship. Some of the lyrics that we hear go, I never know how to treat you, you think I love you, but it ain't true, I'm walking away now, one step forward and back two, I'd like to drag you by the hair and hang you up from the heavens, which kind of paints a different vibe for this scene than I think they were going for. And honestly, it kind of makes me think that maybe Vicky would be a hell of a lot better off if these two would leave her alone and actually deal with the tension festering between them. Be it with fists or, who knows, maybe kisses? Speaking of Vicky, Matt fills Elena and us in on her condition. The hospital is keeping her overnight to make sure there's no infection, and letting her out tomorrow if everything goes well. He hasn't been able to get in touch with her mom to tell her what's happened. She's off in Virginia Beach with her boyfriend. Doesn't seem like she's very present in their lives. While he and Elena are talking, Stefan is perched at a nearby table, listening in. If you remember from the first episode, Damon did say that what he did to Vicky would probably end up a bigger problem for Stefan than for himself. Looks like he might be right. Matt brings up the missing campers from the beginning of the episode, which prompts Elena to ask him if Vicky said what kind of animal it was that attacked her. He tells Elena that Vicky said it was a vampire. That perks Stefan right up, though neither of them believe it. Matt even says that he thinks Vicky must have been drunk at the time. Characters in this show love to blame supernatural occurrences on alcohol, I swear. Taking a less serious and more annoying turn to their conversation, Matt asks Elena what's going on between her and Stefan. She starts her answer with that the last thing she'd want to do is hurt Matt, and that seems warning enough for him to leave the discussion. His excuse is that he wants to be around for Vicky when she wakes up. When Elena turns to look for Stefan, he's up and disappeared again, as he often does. Unfortunately for Aunt Jenna, it's time for her parent-teacher conference, and it just so happens to be with our horrible friend, Mr. Tanner. He's concerned about Jeremy. Apparently, Jeremy's already skipped 6 of his classes in the 3 days since he's been back to school. Jenna tries to offer the death of his parents as an explanation for Jeremy's recent behavior, but Mr. Tanner doesn't take it all that seriously. He makes it sound like he thinks the 4 months that have passed since have been enough time to get over it. And when he asks how Jenna is related to the family, he refers to her as the kid sister of Elena and Jeremy's mother, even though she's a grown-ass adult. And to add insult to injury, he suggests that someone else might be better suited to have custody over Elena and Jeremy. Really, the clock is ticking down on this extremely condescending man, and honestly, I cannot wait to see him go. Matt isn't the only one who wanted to check up on things at the hospital, apparently, because the next time we see Stefan, he's stalking the halls, avoiding Matt and trying to find Vicky's room. She's acting real strange when Matt pokes in, up and out of bed, staring into the distance and totally unresponsive, until Matt's touch scares her back into a state of shock. He tries to calm her down or at least stop her from getting too riled up and hurting herself, but there's no helping Vicky. She fights Matt's hold, screaming at the top of her lungs. Fortunately for Stefan, when Matt runs out of the room to get a nurse, he's able to have a moment alone with Vicky, to use his compulsion to convince her it was an animal that attacked her the night of the party. By the time Matt gets back, Vicky is asleep in her hospital bed, and Stefan has made his escape. Well, sort of. Matt catches a glimpse of him in the hall, prompting a little game of follow the leader, where Stefan does not look questionable at all, peeking back over his shoulder. A bigger problem than Matt's suspicions arise when Stefan rounds the corner into a blood donation room. He freezes in the doorway, transfixed by the sight of the blood bags, the sheer volume of it, the smell. It's clear by the veins popping out in his face that he's barely holding on to the scraps of his self-control. So will he give in to his nature and go on a rampage? No, not this time. We don't personally see it, but we pick up that Stefan must have jumped out the 2-story window when Matt finds absolutely no sign of him in the blood donation room. It's a bit of a mixed bag scenario for Stefan then. He's cleared up the mess with Vicky, and he's managed to not indulge in his thirst, but Matt's eyes are going to be on him even more than before. During their lunch get-together, we get another pretty good look into how Elena's friend group functions. Bonnie is filling in the other girls on what she heard her Gram say about the comet passing overhead, that it's a sign of impending doom, and that the last time it passed over Mystic Falls, there was so much violence that it created a hotbed of paranormal activity. Caroline, like every freaking character so far in this show, once again excuses this as drunken nonsense from an old woman. If someone was looking for a Vampire Diaries themed drinking game, all of the times which insight gets passed off on being a drunk would definitely get you buzzed in these first few episodes. She then brushes Bonnie's conversation right off to pick up another with Elena. The lack of drama or spiciness to Elena's recounting her spending the night just talking with Stefan seems extremely disappointing for Caroline. She thinks that Elena might be holding back info from them, and even when she's assured that Elena isn't, Caroline wonders what's the problem stopping them from hooking up already. Elena rolls her eyes at Caroline's persistence, but ultimately decides that Caroline's right. She needs to not allow herself enough time to get up in her head and talk herself out of what she wants. Short version of what I think this conversation illustrates is that Bonnie is way too easily overlooked by the writers and her so-called best friends. As she's the only main character of color so far, that's both sad and very telling. The long version is the contrast in Caroline and Elena's opinions on this subject and how the writers will punish and reward each girl for it. But I'll have to pick back up on that later in the episode, with a little more evidence to support my claims, of course. Mr. Tanner's harsh words seem to have had a pretty big effect on Aunt Jenna, because when Jeremy comes home, she has a whole speech prepared for him about how she used to be a stoner in high school, but as an escape for reality, it never really lasted. Like with most attempts people have taken to have this conversation with him, Jeremy ducks out of the room as soon as possible, leaving a frustrated Jenna in the dust. Good news. Back at the hospital, Vicky is finally awake. It should be a great sign how energized and calm she seems, but she's a little too calm, eerily so. She doesn't remember freaking out in Matt's arms earlier at all, and when he asks again what it was that attacked her in the woods, she pauses, as if having to search her mind, and repeats what Stefan told her to say, that it was an animal. What else could it have been? But the tone of her voice doesn't sound so certain. If you were wondering where it is that Jeremy ran off to, here he is, popping into Vicky's hospital room for a check-in. Sensing the awkward talk in need of happening, Matt excuses himself to let them have a moment alone. Vicky isn't all that stoked to see Jeremy, though. Her first and biggest concern is that Matt might be suspicious that she and Jeremy are sleeping with each other. Always back to that embarrassment about people finding out about them. Jeremy says she's got to get over it. He's obviously here to stay. But the ever-present third person in the relationship rears his head, at least thought-wise. Tyler is finally starting to show some interest in her, Vicky reasons. Then where is Tyler? Why isn't he taking the time to visit? Vicky still insists that it's not cool for people to know. The fact she's older than him feels weird to her, not to mention the old history with Matt and Elena previously dating. Vicky doesn't think they'd take it well. No one's going to expect anything of this hospital visit, Jeremy reassures her. He is the one that found her after the attack. Hearing that, and how Jeremy carried her out of the woods, Vicky's walls seem to come down a little bit. It seems like this might be the only time a guy outside of her brother has shown her a bit of care that isn't out of a complete, selfish want to hook up. Maybe they could be a little sweet together, who knows? Taking Caroline's advice to heart, Elena heads over to the Salvatore boarding house on a special sex mission, where she proceeds to ring the bell and knock on the front door exactly once, before it just so happens to swing open, and she wanders in without a welcome. Somebody hasn't watched enough horror movies. This house even has built-in random creepy creaks made to freak her out while she gazes around all fascinated. Stefan's not the only one that lives here, though. Just as Elena's about to turn around and leave, a crow swoops through the doorway, making a ruckus and barely missing Elena as it flies past. Of course, if the crow's around, we know who's close by. Elena whips around and comes practically nose to nose with Damon Salvatore himself, the man who excitedly proposed, using her as a joint Capri Sun with Stefan just the other night. This man does not know personal space. Elena's apologizing about barging in, and he's all up in her face, staring her down. Again with these little games to unsettle his prey. That's not his only method, though. When Elena goes to explain that the door was open, she notices that it's somehow firmly shut behind her. Damon, who surprisingly to Elena already knows her name, introduces himself as Stefan's brother, which gives her pause. She says Stefan didn't tell her he had a brother. If you remember the first episode, though, in Stefan's defense, he didn't claim to not have any siblings, just not any he's in contact with. Damon makes a little quip that Stefan's not one to brag, then invites her in. While they wait for Stefan to show up, Damon uses the time alone with Elena to plant seeds of doubt in her mind. He makes sure to drop that he wasn't sure Stefan would ever get over the last one, as if the woman Stefan was in love with was just last week and not in the 1800s. Of course, that's what he wants Elena to think. Even suggests that maybe Stefan hasn't brought it up because he doesn't want Elena to get the idea that he's on the rebound. He's got her head spinning with questions exactly the way he planned. And he gets to rub it all in his brother's face too, because this is when Stefan finally makes his entrance. This isn't the Stefan Elena is used to. He's gone cold, walls up, won't meet her eyes because his are locked firmly with Damon's, until Elena awkwardly dismisses herself. Once she's gone, Damon continues poking. He taunts Stefan about overexerting himself, that his no human diet might make his powers not work as well. Stefan ignores it, instead choosing to ask how long Elena was there before he showed up. This plays into Damon's plans perfectly. Is Stefan worried they're doomed to repeat the past? And if he's so afraid of it, is that why he's pretending to be human? Stefan insists he's not pretending anything, even though we as the audience have had quite a bit of proof that he's been having a hard time holding back from his true nature. Nobody knows this better than Damon. Nobody knows Stefan better than Damon. He approaches Stefan, gets right up in his face, just to make sure his version of the truth gets right into Stefan's ear. That they both know the closest Stefan will ever get to humanity is when he rips it open and feeds on it. Is this part of Damon's plan? Trying to break Stefan's commitment to staying on the right path? At this point, Stefan would like to know what kind of game Damon is playing in general, but Damon says he'll have to wait and see. And so will we. Head full of the doubts Damon planted, Elena fills Aunt Jenna in on all of the drama she picked up over at the boarding house. That Stefan's on the rebound and has obvious family issues. Jenna tells Elena to wait until she dates a guy with mommy issues, or cheating issues, or amphetamine issues, giving us a little hint at her own dating history, which will be relevant later on in the season. Back from the hospital, Jeremy tries to sneak into the house unseen. Jenna spots him, but he hurries up the stairs with her chasing close behind. She's wondering where he's been. He's being dismissive, the usual. Then, I shit you not, Jenna hurls an apple at his back in frustration. Jeremy's really so checked out that he wonders why she did it. She warns him that he needs to stop bitching or he's grounded. How would she keep him grounded, or why he would care is a little misty, though. Obviously to him, too, so Jeremy teases her and says goodnight. No progress made there. Progress is being made elsewhere, though. Not necessarily good progress. Vicky is stirring in her sleep, caught in a nightmare. She wakes up, goes to freshen up in the bathroom, but is spooked by a dark figure behind her in the reflection of the mirror. Of course, nothing's there when she turns around and check. Shaken, she takes a deep breath and turns off the sink, going to wake Matt up. The second Vicky reaches out to touch him, though, a flash of Damon's face with his fangs extended, a memory perhaps, flashes through her mind. With that flash, she wakes up for real, very much alone in her hospital room. Seems like Damon may have been right about Stefan's powers not working well enough. Guess we'll have to see. No better time for a special celebration, am I right? Tonight is the night of the comet. While handing out flyers for the event, Elena is filling Bonnie in on Stefan drama. He didn't call or text after the weirdness earlier, but as Elena realized, they didn't even exchange that information with each other. Sparks may have been flying between them, but maybe that's all it was. She says the timing was probably off anyway. Bonnie, being an awesome friend as per usual, calls Elena out on what she feels like are excuses. It's way easier to talk herself out of trying than to take the risk of putting herself out there. Also getting ready for the event, Caroline walks away from a conversation right into the face of danger. Across the lawn, she spots Damon, or as she would call him, the mystery guy from the grill. They make heated eye contact, and as a go-getter, Caroline charges forward to make a move. But, as the king of playing with his food, Damon disappears the second her sight is blocked by a person walking by. So Caroline's safe for now, frustrated as she is. But with Damon around, no one is truly safe. Uncle-nephew Zach pretty much tells the same thing to Stefan. Damon is putting them at risk, and Stefan being town is why Damon's there in the first place. He gets his kicks from making Stefan miserable. This goes a bit beyond miserable, though. If Vicky talks, all of them are screwed. Speaking of Vicky, she's out and about, at the grill to talk to her boss about her schedule. Even in Mystic Falls, you can't get a day off after being attacked in the woods. While Tyler is watching from the pool table, Jeremy helps Vicky out with some pain pills and invites her to watch the comet together. Despite her reservations earlier, she seems really open to it. Which means it's time for Tyler to butt in. He finally wants to know how she's doing. Right, man. It's a little too late. Vicky brushes him off and takes off, much to Jeremy's amusement. So festivities for the night of the comet seem to be carrying a candle and helping light whoever's you come across. Matt lights Elena's, smiling like this moment means something deeper. She smiles back, but turns to go on her way, immediately walking to the candle of somebody else. Mr. Stefan Salvatore. Whoops. Too bad for Matt. This is the first time they've seen each other since the strange moment at the boarding house. Elena's quiet, reserved. Is it too soon to be putting herself out there? As someone who's been around long enough to know about it, Stefan takes the time to fill her in on a little comet knowledge. It's been traveling across space for thousands of years. All alone, he says. Elena brings up that Bonnie mentioned it was seen as a harbinger of evil. He doesn't think so. It's just a ball of snow and ice, trapped on a path it can't escape. And once every 145 years it gets to come home. Probably sees something of himself in that. Now that the ice has been broken a little, Stefan takes the chance to apologize for what happened yesterday. He wasn't himself. Rightfully so, Elena is a bit hesitant to accept his excuse right away. She says Stefan seems to spend a lot of time apologizing. He says he has a lot to apologize for, but yesterday wasn't about Elena, it was about Damon. Damon, the brother that Stefan forgot to mention to Elena that he had. It's complicated. More than he's able to say, really. Elena tells him that Damon brought up his ex, and that from how he told it, how Catherine broke his heart. Not an excuse this time, Stefan explains that it was a long time ago. Longer than Elena could ever possibly know. 1864 is not the recent heartbreak that Damon wanted to make it out to be. The passage of time since doesn't make much of a difference to Elena, though. She knows from experience that when you lose someone, it stays with you. For all she knows, the same worry about getting hurt could be affecting Stefan getting close to her as well. That thought pulls her away from the chance of continuing the conversation. She does exactly what Bonnie was afraid she would, and gives both herself and Stefan an out. They had a great talk the other night, and wonderful chemistry, but reality has reared its head. Poor Stefan gets to be emo about his kindredship with the comet all by himself now. Maybe you won't have to be alone for too long. It seems like Damon is about to give Stefan another cleanup project to handle. On her way to talk to her boss, Vicky's devastating case of bad luck kicks in, just in time for her to run into Damon at the bar. If I didn't know any better, I'd say this girl is cursed. Because she has no reason she's aware of to be afraid of Damon, she does the worst thing possible and tells him that she knows him from somewhere. He doesn't have much of a reaction to it, as it goes along with him wanting to cause trouble, even if it is unplanned. But Vicky seems to realize how weird the situation is and excuses herself to the bathroom, where she finds a dark figure lurking behind her for the second time. This time, though, Vicky's not so lucky that it's only a half-recalled memory in a dream. Damon pounces on her, and we cut to Jeremy asking around if anyone's seen her. It's not the right time for this at all, but the area is a powder keg of tension, so Jeremy's question really sets things off. Tyler mentions Jeremy giving Vicky pills, which gets Elena worried that he might be dealing drugs. Things really snowball when Tyler tries to egg Jeremy on with the idea that Vicky would never go for him. And of course, Jeremy says that she already has. Matt's uncomfortable, and Caroline and Tyler are in complete disbelief. We know Jeremy's telling the truth, and he lets a little more truth spill with a jab that he didn't even have to force himself on Vicky like Tyler tried to. That bothers Matt, understandably, but thankfully, instead of fanning the flames, he gets that the best thing for Vicky right now is if they all go out and look for her. Before they head out, Elena tries to pull Jeremy aside for a talk. If you've gotten a sense for what kind of place he's in so far, you know that he's going to try to avoid that like the plague. She says he has two options. He could be sent to a therapist or rehab, or he could actually just talk to Elena for once. Classic Jeremy, he votes for none of the above. While out looking for Vicky, Matt runs into Stefan, fills him in on the situation. Stefan says he'll keep an eye out for her. But before Stefan can take off, Matt calls him back to ask an important question. He's not just going to pretend like he didn't notice Stefan at the hospital the other day. What was he doing there? Not making a good case for himself, Stefan gives the most vague answer of all time. Visiting. Not who or why. For a guy who wants to blend in, he's doing a hell of a job weirding people out. Matt's focus can't stay on the most pressing, immediate problem here, though. He has to be his annoying self and point out to Stefan how long he and Elena have known each other. That even though they're not together right now, he'll always look out for her. Stefan, like me, also isn't interested in listening to this. Unlike me, he has super hearing, and is picking up on two awfully familiar voices. A frightened-sounding woman begging a man who tells her that she needs to stop screaming. He dips from the conversation. Real awkward, but it's time for a rescue. On the top of a nearby building, Damon's got poor Vicky by the arm and is forcing her right by the edge, obviously as a sort of bait for Stefan. Stefan zips over and leaps up the building, triggering Damon to say one of his most ridiculous lines so far. Not bad, have you been eating bunnies? This man could not be less serious. Seems that all he is serious about is pushing Stefan to his limits. Damon says that he personally doesn't need Vicky dead, but that Stefan might. What does he mean by that? Well, Damon presses Vicky, pushing past Stefan's weak attempt at compulsion, to conjure up the memories that she did indeed get attacked by a vampire. But when she rightfully identifies the vampire she got attacked by as Damon, he redirects her. Ignoring Stefan's desperate begging, Damon uses his own compulsion, made perfect by regularly feeding on humans, to convince Vicky that Stefan was the one who attacked her, that Stefan is a dangerous monster that can't be trusted. Then he rips off Vicky's bandage, putting Stefan between a rock and a hard place. Everything is stacked against him. The situation can't be handled with his compulsion. He's too weak. He could kill Vicky, but he's trying to be good, to play at being a human, starting new. But it's clear her blood calls to him. Damon knows that, and he uses it against Stefan, pushing a bleeding Vicky into his arms, explaining how easy the situation would be solved if Stefan would just give in and drink human blood. He wants to corrupt Stefan. But Stefan is still clinging onto his humanity, as impossible a feat as it feels. He pushes Vicky away from himself and fights his hunger. He's not going to give Damon what he wants, for him to kill again, for them to be on the same level as brothers again. Stefan says he would rather let Vicky run and tell everyone that vampires exist. He would rather be staked in the center of town, because at least then he would be free of Damon. Taken aback, maybe, Damon just chuckles at that. His walls of snide and sarcasm are too high to be able to sense whether Stefan's words stung or not. Carefree as ever, he makes his way over to Vicky and crouches down, whispering in her ear with a sort of fake tenderness that's kind of disconcerting, considering what he's done and who he is. By the time he's done with her, Vicky has no idea how she found her way onto that roof. That she was attacked by a vampire, or that she was an inch away from dying just moments ago. She thinks nothing of it, dusts herself off, and goes on her way, just like that. It's scary how well Damon's compulsion worked on her, in comparison to Stefan's. And Damon's not going anywhere. In fact, he says Mystic Falls is in need of a wake-up call. What's his plan regarding that? Well, he tells Stefan, and essentially us as well, that that's for me to know and for you to... ... That's a real line, I'm not messing with you. Damon is by far the most theatrical and over-exaggerated character in this show, for better or for worse. Thankfully, Matt is a much better brother than he is an ex, a friend, or just about anything else. Vicky needs someone to care about and for her more than anything else right now. He helps her apply a new bandage and puts aside the macho Who Gets Elena competition to thank Stefan for helping find her, which, he technically did. He also almost ate her too, but he didn't, and I guess that's what really counts. More tough times for Jeremy alert. Despite the earlier moment where Vicky seems surprised and touched by his genuine care for her as a person and not an object, she's right back to making out with Tyler at the pool table. Jeremy watches them get their mac on sadly before taking off. Stefan makes his way over to where Caroline and Bonnie are sitting to ask about Elena's whereabouts. Before he leaves, Bonnie comes in clutch by going out of her way to give him Elena's phone, number, and email. That way there's no excuse anymore. She really is the best. When she reaches out to hand Stefan the note, her powers that she and all of her friends are so skeptical of show her a flash of something at the touch of his hand. We don't get to see what it is, but Bonnie looks visibly spooked, so much so that even Stefan notices. A question comes out of her mouth before she even has the time to think better of it. "What happened to you?" she asks. Stefan doesn't answer, and Bonnie doesn't really wait for one anyway. She realizes what an odd thing that was to say and heads for the hills, so whatever she saw must have been pretty intense. At home, Elena walks in on Jenna going through Jeremy's stuff. We already know Mr. Tanner's talk got to her, but now we see the full extent. Jenna's spiraling. Their mother, her sister, made parenting them look so easy, but she can't be perfect like that. She's only going to mess Jeremy up worse. As if she's the reason that Jeremy is struggling, and not him struggling with the grieving process. Elena assures Jenna that that's just the fear talking. Jenna's just scared. They all are. She seems to come to a realization when she tells Jenna that, about her own problems about opening up to Stefan. She heads off to him, big romance moment style. Speaking of big romance, Caroline has her own meet cute in the parking lot of the grill. Sorry, did I say cute? Whoops, I meant meet creepy. On her way to her car, her head's on a swivel, feeling like she's being watched, because of course she is. Mystic Falls has a vampire on the loose after all. Damon finally decides to make his big appearance, when Caroline's scared out of her mind and out of breath from first hurrying to her car, then fumbling her keys and having to pick them up. A practiced hunter, he positions himself right between her and the door of her car. She calms down at the sight of him. She's been wanting to talk to him since the other night. And she seems just charmed enough by his unsettlingness and cockiness to take him home with her. Over at the boarding house, Elena invites Stefan outside to view the comet with her. Sort of a redo of their fumbled moment at the event earlier. He's glad to see her. How they left things earlier, it didn't feel right to him. She tells Stefan what we've been seeing her struggle with this whole episode. That all she's been doing recently is making excuses to keep herself safe emotionally. That she's afraid if she lets herself have even one moment of happiness, that the worst will happen again, and that she doesn't know if she'll be able to survive that. Stefan references Elena's earlier speech about reality, but instead of it being a negative this time, an excuse about how they aren't meant to work out, he uses reality to mean the obvious chemistry between the two of them that they shouldn't ignore. Then they share their sweet first and second kisses under the harbinger of death comet soaring by overhead. Caroline, on the other hand, is in bed with Damon, who is trailing kisses lower and lower down her sternum, teasing her and the viewers, before raising his head, veins gone dark with hunger, and sinking his fangs into Caroline's neck. We get a flash of her scream and pained expression before we get the end title card. Okay, so allow me just a moment to rant, please. Here is where we finally swing back around to what I was talking about and the contrast between how the writers see and treat Caroline and Elena. Elena was cautious and careful and romantic and doesn't mention how much or whether she wants sex, so the writers reward her with the romantically soundtracked sweeping moment with her love interest. Good girls get good things, they seem to say. While Caroline is bold and goes after what she wants. She has desires, and if she goes after them, if she dares to want to sleep with this guy who she thinks is hot, then she has to deal with whatever consequences she gets. Get preyed on, I guess. And maybe I am just putting too much thought into this. Very possible. Maybe not, I don't know. But the thought needed to go somewhere, so here it was. Now that the recap is wrapped up, I'm going to address the time between episodes real quick. Sorry for not getting this one out a little faster. One of the original intentions for this podcast was to give me motivation to solve my show abandoning habits and to keep me accountable. Unfortunately, it seemed to have sort of opposite effect. I enjoy making the podcast quite a bit, actually. It's given me a chance to maybe think a little deeper about the things I'm watching. Like I was watching a movie the other day, and after I finished, my first thought was, oh man, I'd love to do an episode talking about its themes. But there's something about turning this show that was always a kind of shut-off-your-brain good times comfort watch into a scheduled and routine thing that makes it feel like homework, if that makes sense. This isn't me saying I want to drop this specific series, and it's definitely not me stopping the podcast. What it is a realization that I need to give myself the freedom to speak on whatever topic sparks my excitement at the time. I want to keep doing this, but there are a ton of movies that I'd love to discuss, or try for the first time. Maybe even some characters or pairs that I would like to zoom in on. If you would be interested in hearing any of that, I'd love to know. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you'll join me again for the next one.